Look, if you look at it historically, I think the volatility is becoming less over time. There's some evidence of that. But having said that, I think everybody needs to be prepared to deal with the volatility, and everybody needs to think long term. And because long term, I'm quite confident that this is going to be a multi-million dollar per coin asset. And so if you're buying it at 72 today, it feels like you're paying too much. But one of the great stories from Madeira. Somebody told me they knew Max pretty well. I guess when Max was buying his first coins, he paid, and this is Max Kaiser, he was paying 50 cents. And he felt like he'd overpaid because Trace Meyer, who's a true OG, was buying his at 30 cents. Pretty much everybody who's in Bitcoin feels like they're too late and they're overpaying until about 5 or 10 years go by. And then you're thinking, and people are going to be saying, what do you mean? Hang on, you have one whole coin? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I bought my first ones at $300. Not enough, obviously. That's the other feeling that's the feeling everybody in the space has too. I wish I'd bought more. Well, we all do. That's just the nature of it. But buy what you can because it's a superior savings technology. And then, sit back and go live your life and do things you enjoy, knowing that your money is not being debased, which is a very comforting feeling, right?
Bitcoin's price is heading towards multi-millions of dollars per coin. Do not make the mistake of selling at $100,000. Even if you're buying at all-time highs, don't think you're overpaying because Bitcoin will surpass all expected price targets. This is the latest message out from Larry Lepard. Recently, Larry Lepard shared his views on Bitcoin's remarkable price trajectory. He pointed out how Bitcoin challenges traditional ideas about ownership, sparking interesting debates about its legal and regulatory standing. Expressing optimism about Bitcoin's future, Lepard believes it will become the base layer of the global monetary system. He emphasizes Bitcoin's ability to withstand manipulation and depreciation, presenting it as a sturdy alternative to fiat currencies. Despite Bitcoin's current record highs, Lepard maintains a positive outlook on its future trajectory, proposing that the Bitcoin price will continue to climb substantially, driven by factors such as institutional adoption and widespread acceptance. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video where Larry Lepard explains why you should never sell your Bitcoin even at $100,000 per coin. Also guys, only a small percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed. If you enjoy staying up to date with finance content, consider subscribing or liking the video. It's free and you can always change your mind. Now here's why Larry Lepard thinks that $100,000 per coin is coming faster than you think.
Well, property is taxed, but it's generally when it's physical property and it's real estate taxes and it's the local authorities that want, that provide services for the property that justify the taxation. They haven't gotten to the point where they tax, investment property until such time as it's a realized gain, and that would be a big bridge to cross. But it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, they'll be looking. I remember there was some talk. I mean, Bernie Sanders and others were talking about trying to tax, billionaires just on unrealized gains or on their net wealth. And look, a political system which is failing, which needs money, is going to, they're going to flail around and try and get money wherever they can. And so I think it's certainly one of the risks with Bitcoin. I will say one thing. I respect Michael a lot, and I think he's right that it is property. But it actually could, over time, it could become more than that. I'm not sure if he believes this or not, but I actually believe it will ultimately become the base layer of money. Because it will be a form of money that's the characteristics of which are so superior to the alternative, which is the dollar. The dollar will fade into existence, and we'll have sats will be the new basis of the monetary system. But admittedly, that could be many, many years out, and I might be getting ahead of myself. I would just suggest to people that are looking at this and listening to this, that they take the time to really study Bitcoin and understand it at a deep level, because one of the things, we all try and orange pill people, and sometimes I think we forget when we're orange pilling them to help them to understand how volatile it can be. As a perfect example is, if you were orange pilling people a couple of years ago, and when it was in the 50s and 60s, and then it dropped to 15. I had some friends who, when it dropped to 15, they thought they, made a mistake and they sold it, and that was the wrong thing to do. And I think, people need to look at the history of the asset, understand that, it's higher highs, higher lows, but there are big drawdowns. And so, you don't want to use a lot of leverage with this asset because of these drawdowns. And you want to in general aim to more dollar cost average as opposed to plop buy. And so that you don't find yourself in a situation where you need to sell your Bitcoin when the price of Bitcoin is on a drawdown. Because I think everybody who's been in Bitcoin for more than 4 years, generally speaking, you gain purchasing power.
Yeah.
But sometimes, in that cycle, you would lose purchasing power if you bought it and a year later it had fallen. So I would just caution everybody to understand the nature of the asset and to think to understand it deeply enough such that if there is a drawdown, you won't be tempted to sell, because in fact, what you should be doing is buying that drawdown, not selling it. Well, that's right. I mean, and this is why we've often said it's kind of, they're trapped, right? And we know that when they're trapped, that the default condition is always print more money, print or go burr. Biden is talking about trying to tax the rich. The increase in the total budget size is enormous. I mean, I was reading something in the Wall Street Journal this morning talking about how the whole budget was really a fantasy, because a lot of what he's projecting just isn't realistic. I mean, I find it amazing that the CBO is projecting not that great an outcome for the next 5 or 10 years. And they're saying there won't be any recessions in a 10-year window. And they think that inflation and interest rates are going to go back to 2 or 3%. And, I'm like, what planet are these people living on? We live in a financial fantasy world, really, that these people have kind of constructed. But there are some free markets. Probably Bitcoin is the freest of all the markets in terms of, lack of manipulation. And guess what? They get it. I mean, Bitcoiners get it, and people are getting it, and they're saying, okay, if you're going to debase my currency, I'm going to buy a currency that by definition cannot be debased above and beyond the programmatic formula. So, and this is why Bitcoin's at new all-time highs, and I expect it's going to go much higher. So, yeah, and some gold guys are getting mad at me. I'm not down on gold, and I never have been. I'm pivoting, or not pivoting. I'm trending away towards gold just because. Let me make a couple things straight. I think gold is going to do incredibly well in the monetary debasement that's coming, but I think Bitcoin is going to do much better than that. And so, as an investment manager, my job is to earn the top risk-adjusted return for my clients, and I view Bitcoin as a better risk-adjusted return than gold. This far into the game, and now having a lot of the risks in my mind in Bitcoin gone away. I mean, perfect example. One of the biggest risks I think in Bitcoin until the ETFs. Was TradFi looked at it, or most investment pools looked at it and said, how can we invest, and Saylor made this point, how can we invest in something that we think the government might shut down? And, when the government approved the ETFs, I mean, they more or less gave the green light, say, well, we're not going to shut it down, at least not now. There might come a time when, they're in distress and they decide they want to shut it down. That's a whole different discussion, but that's a few years out. And so, I think with the endorsement of the ETFs and the recognition that those funds are now going to flow into it, this is no longer just a niche form of sound money. This is mainstream sound money, and it can really, in a meaningful way, compete with gold. And so, as a result of that, and I think it will beat gold over time. But that doesn't mean nominally, I don't think gold will ever go down. I mean, gold in fiat terms will continue to go up, just not as quickly as Bitcoin. And so one of the things that happens, I mean, there was a time probably 6 months ago where I was personally 50-50 gold and gold-related things in my fund that are gold stocks and so forth, and Bitcoin. And that's probably now, I haven't done the math recently, but it's probably like 60-40 or 65-35, partly just because the Bitcoin went up.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't buy any more Bitcoin. I didn't buy any more gold. I actually did buy some more Bitcoin, but not a lot. But when the price of Bitcoin goes up as a percentage of your asset holdings, it becomes a larger percentage. So, I've not completely abandoned gold, and I think gold is very appropriate for people who want a sound money alternative with lower volatility. That some people need that, right? You can't, 70, 80, 90-year-olds or, whatever, older investors can't comfortably be putting huge pieces of their net worth into Bitcoin, knowing that there are times when it has 50 to 70% drawdowns. It's irresponsible. They can certainly put in 10, 20, 30, 40%. And so if you want a sound money, asset that can't be printed by the government, that has never really gone down more than 20% in a given year, gold represents a solid choice for some people. It's a mistake that a lot of investors make, I think, and that is to say you've got a gain and you're feeling good about it and you think, oh, this can't last and maybe it's overpriced now and therefore I'll sell it. I bought Microsoft in '86 when it went public, 14 times trailing, growing 40% a year. And I made, 3 times my money on it. And I sold it for a logical reason, actually, because it was the only money I had to make a down payment on a condominium, and I wanted to own a condominium. So, but had I held on to it, it turned out it went up another 4,000x, and I missed all that. You're right. And,
wow. So you bought at what price and you sold at what price?
Well, back then it was probably $15, but split adjusted,
Wow.
it was a 6-cent stock, and I think Microsoft today is trading at 200 and something. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I left a ton of money on the table, but who could know? And by the way, most stocks aren't Microsoft. I mean,
Right.
the reason that worked, the killer stocks. If you really look at some of the greatest stock returns that have been made in the last 30 years of investing, they've generally been in the base layer of something that grows and spreads to become ubiquitous, and they've got kind of a monopoly position and a network effect. So I put in that bucket. Microsoft was probably the first one. Google is another one. Facebook is another one. All the FANGs, and then. Frankly, I think the most recent, and those. And by the way, you're a little too late on all those. You can still buy those companies. They are still monopolies. They will grow, and they're fabulous companies. But the big gains have been made in all of those categories. This is buying Bitcoin right here is buying Microsoft in its first 5 or 10 years of existence, right? Yeah. I mean, this is the base layer of the new form of money, and ultimately everything will be denominated in sats. So. And Saylor asked me the question. He said, well, you sold it. And he made the point, and I think he's right. There are a lot of people who don't understand this asset. They're going to buy it, and it's going to work, and they're going to feel great. And they're going to think, hey, I made 3 or 4 times my money. And they're going to sell it, not realizing that it's going to just keep, as he says, it's going up forever, Laura. I mean, this thing, unless we're wrong about this being adopted as the base layer of money, and I see no evidence to suggest that's the case, these coins will be, 100,000, then they'll be 400, then they'll be 1 million, then they'll be 4 million, then they'll be 10 million, and the time frame on all of that is probably 20 years because, Microsoft started in the early 80s, and here we are 40 years later, that it's the multi-billion-dollar company that it is. So this doesn't happen overnight. But the point, as you raise, is you don't want to sell. It's like Manhattan real estate, as he said. You don't want to sell a cornerstone asset that can't be replicated and can't be debased just because you have a profit in it.
So there's Larry Lepard with his analysis on Bitcoin's remarkable journey and future prospects. He explained how Bitcoin challenges conventional notions of property, sparking debates on its legal status. Feeling hopeful about Bitcoin's future, Lepard sees it becoming the cornerstone of the global money system. He highlights its strengths against manipulation and depreciation, suggesting it as a sturdy option compared to government-issued currencies. Despite Bitcoin's current highs, Lepard stays positive about its path forward, expecting more growth driven by institutions adopting it and wider acceptance. Before we go, a quick reminder for those who are keen on staying updated in the fast-paced world of crypto and Bitcoin. Consider subscribing to our daily 5-minute crypto newsletter. It's a concise resource for the latest expert predictions, breaking news, and top on-chain analysis trusted by over 50,000 subscribers for insightful crypto investment information. Click the first link in the description to join our community and elevate your crypto investment knowledge today. Anyway guys, hope you all enjoyed today's video and that provided you with some value. I'll see you all in the next one, and as always, all the best.